Chapter 5. The 5 Levels of Investors. Investing is the key to financial freedom. My poor dad often said, investing is risky. My rich dad often said, being financially uneducated is risky. Today, most people know they should invest. The problem is that most people, like my poor dad, believe investing is risky, and investing is risky if you lack financial education, experience, and guidance. Learning to invest is important because investing is the key to financial freedom. 5 things happen to people who do not invest, or who invest poorly. 1. They work hard all their lives. 2. They worry about money all their lives. 3. They depend on others, such as family, a company pension, or the government, to take care of them. 4. The boundaries of their lives are defined by money. 5. They will not know what true freedom is. Rich dad often said, you will never know true freedom until you achieve financial freedom. By this, he meant that learning to invest is more important than learning a profession. He said, when you learn a profession, let's say to be a doctor, you learn how to work for money. Learning to invest is learning how to have money work for you. The moment you have money working for you, you have your ticket to freedom. He also said, the more money you have working for you, the less you pay in taxes if you are a true investor. Learning to invest. My rich dad began preparing me for the I quadrant at the age of 9 using the game of Monopoly as a teaching tool. Over and over again, he would say, one of the great formulas for wealth is found in the game of Monopoly. Always remember the formula. For green houses, 1 red hotel. The game of Monopoly is a game of cash flow. For example, if you had 1 green house on a property you owned and you received $10, that was $10 a month in cash flow. 2 houses, $20. 3 houses, $30. And the red hotel, $50. More green houses and more red hotels mean more cash flow, less work, less taxes, and more freedom. A simple game, but an important lesson. Rich dad played Monopoly in real life. He would often take his son and me to visit his green houses that would one day become a big red hotel right on Waikiki Beach. As I grew up and watched my rich dad play the game of Monopoly in real life, I learned many valuable lessons about investing. Some of those lessons are: investing is not risky. Investing is fun. Investing can make you very, very rich. More importantly, investing can set you free from the struggle of earning a living and worrying about money. In other words, if you were smart, you could build a pipeline of cash flow for life. A pipeline that would produce cash in good times and bad, in market booms and market crashes. Your cash flow would increase automatically with inflation and, at the same time, allow you to pay less in taxes. I am not saying real estate is the only way to invest. I use the game of Monopoly simply as an example of how the rich get richer. A person can earn income from stocks via dividends, from bonds via interest, or from oil, books, and patents via royalties. In other words, there are many ways to financial freedom. Financial experts. Unfortunately, due to a lack of financial education in schools, most people blindly turn their money over to people they believe are financial experts, people such as bankers, financial planners, and stockbrokers. Unfortunately, most of these experts are not really investors in the I quadrant. Most are employees in the E quadrant, working for a paycheck, or self-employed financial advisors in the S quadrant working for fees and commissions. Most experts cannot afford to stop working simply because they don't have investments working for them. Warren Buffett said, Wall Street is the only place that people ride to in a Rolls-Royce to get advice from those who take the subway. If people do not have sound financial education, they cannot tell if a financial advisor is a salesman or a con man, a fool or a genius. Remember, all con men are nice people. If they were not being nice, by telling you what you want to hear, you would not listen to them. There is nothing wrong with being a salesperson. We all have something to sell. Yet, as Warren Buffett says, never ask an insurance salesman if you need insurance. When it comes to money, there are many people desperate enough to tell and sell you anything just to get your money. Interestingly, the vast majority of investors never meet the person taking their money. In most of the Western world, employees simply have their money automatically deducted from their paycheck, the same way the tax department collects taxes. Many workers in America simply allow their employer to deduct their money and put it into their 401k retirement plan, possibly the worst way to invest for retirement. 401k plans go by different names in different countries. In Australia, they are called superannuation plans. In Japan, they are also called 401ks. And in Canada, they are known as RRSPs. I say the 401k may possibly be the worst way to invest for retirement for the following reasons. 1. Time magazine is on my side. Time magazine has run a number of articles over the years, questioning the wisdom of putting so many people's retirement at risk. Time has been predicting that millions will not have enough money to retire after a lifetime of turning their money over to strangers. A typical 401k plan takes 80% of the profits. The investor may receive 20% if they are lucky. The investor puts up 100% of the money and takes 100% of the risk. The 401k plan puts up 0% of the money and takes 0% of the risk. The 401k company makes money, even if you lose money. 2. Taxes work against you with a 401k. Long-term capital gains are taxed at a lower rate of around 15%, but the 401k gains are taxed at the ordinary earned income tax rate of around 35%, the highest of the three types of income, which are ordinary earned, portfolio, passive. If you want to take the money out of your 401k early, you'll have to pay an additional 10% penalty tax. 3. You have no insurance if there is a stock market crash. To drive a car, I must have insurance in case there is a crash. When I invest in real estate, I have insurance in case of fire or other losses. Yet the 401k investor has no insurance to prevent losses from market crashes. 4. The 401k is for people who are planning to be poor when they retire. That is why financial planners often say, when you retire, you'll be taxed at a lower tax rate. They assume your income will go down in retirement into a lower tax bracket. If, on the other hand, you are rich when you retire and you have a 401k, you could pay even higher taxes at retirement. Smart investors understand taxes before investing. The sad truth about most financial advisors and pension fund managers is that they are not investors. Most are employees in the E quadrant. One reason why so many government pensions and union pensions are in trouble is because these employees are not trained to be investors. Most do not have any real-life financial education. To make matters worse, most financial experts advise uneducated investors to invest for the long term in a well-diversified portfolio of stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. Why do these financial experts, employees in the E quadrant, or salespeople in the S quadrant masquerading as investors in the I quadrant, advise you to do that? It's because they get paid, not by how much money they make for you, but by how much money you turn over to them for the long term. The longer your money is parked with them, the more they get paid. The reality is that real investors do not park their money. They move their money. It is a strategy known as the velocity of money. A true investor's money is always moving, acquiring new assets, and then moving on to acquire even more assets. Only amateurs park their money. I am not saying 401k type plans are bad, although I would never have one. For me, they are too expensive, too risky, too tax inefficient, and unfair to the investor. I am saying there are better ways to invest, but they require financial education. What is the best investment? The average investor does not know the difference between investing for cash flow and investing for capital gains. Most investors invest for capital gains, hoping and praying the price of their stock or home goes up. As long as you have more cash flowing in than flowing out, your investment is a good investment. Keep in mind that it's not the asset class that makes a person rich or poor. For example, when a person asks, is real estate a good investment? I reply, I don't know. Are you a good investor? Or if they ask, are stocks a good investment? Again, my answer is the same. I don't know. Are you a good investor? My point is that it is never the investment or asset class that is important. Success or failure, wealth or poverty, depends solely on how smart the investor is. A smart investor will make millions in the stock market. An amateur will lose millions. Tragically, most people do not think learning to invest is important. This is why most people believe investing is risky and turn their money over to experts, most of whom are not really investors, but salespeople, who make money whether the investor makes money or loses money. 5 different levels of investors. There are 5 types or levels of investors found in the I quadrant. Level 1, the zero financial intelligence level. Sadly, in America, once the richest country in the world, over 50% of the U.S. population is at the bottom level of the I quadrant. Simply said, they have nothing to invest. There are many people who make a lot of money who fall into this category. They earn a lot and spend more than they earn. I have a friend who looks very rich. He has a good job as a real estate broker, a beautiful wife, and 3 kids in private school. They live in a beautiful house overlooking the Pacific Ocean in San Diego. He and his wife drive expensive European cars. When his son and daughters were old enough, they too drove expensive cars. They looked rich, but what they had was bad debt. They looked rich, but were poorer than most poor people. Now, they are homeless. When the real estate market crashed, they crashed. They were no longer able to pay the interest on all the debt they had accumulated. When we were younger, this same friend made a lot of money. Unfortunately, it was his low financial intelligence level, 0, that caused him to be a 0 over the long run. In fact, he is so deeply in debt that he is really a sub-zero investor. Like many people, everything he buys loses value or costs him money. Nothing he buys makes him richer. Level 2, the savers are losers level. Many people believe it is smart to save money. The problem is that today, money is no longer money. Today, people are saving counterfeit dollars, money that can be created at the speed of light. In 1971, President Nixon took the US dollar off the gold standard, and money became debt. The primary reason why prices have risen since 1971 is simply because the United States now has the power to print money to pay its bills. Today, savers are the biggest losers. Since 1971, the US dollar has lost 95% of its value when compared to gold. It will not take another 40 years to lose its remaining 5%. Remember, in 1971, gold was $35 an ounce. 40 years later, gold was $1,400 an ounce. That is a massive loss of purchasing power for the dollar. The problem grows worse as the U.S. national debt escalates into the trillions of dollars, and the U.S. continues to print more counterfeit money. As the Federal Reserve Bank and central banks throughout the world print trillions of dollars at high speed, every printed dollar means higher taxes and more inflation. In spite of this fact, millions of people continue to believe saving money is smart. It used to be smart when money was money. The biggest market in the world is the bond market. Bond is another word for savings. There are many different types of bonds for different types of savers. There are U.S. Treasury bonds, corporate bonds, municipal bonds, and junk bonds. For years, it was assumed that U.S. government bonds and government municipal bonds were safe. Then the financial crisis of 2007 began. As many of you know, the crisis was caused by mortgage bonds such as mortgage-backed securities, or MBS, also known as derivatives. Millions of these mortgage bonds were made up of subprime mortgages, which were loans to subprime or high-risk borrowers. You may recall that some of those borrowers had no income and no job, yet they were buying homes they could never pay for. The Wall Street bankers took these subprime loans and packaged them into bonds, magically got this subprime bond labeled as prime, and sold them to institutions, banks, governments, and individual investors. To me, this is fraud, but that is the banking system. Once the subprime borrower could no longer pay the interest on their mortgages, these MBS bonds began blowing up all over the world. Interestingly, it was Warren Buffett's firm, Moody's, that blessed these subprime mortgages as AAA prime debt, the highest rating for bonds. Today, many people blame the big banks, such as Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan, for the crisis. Yet if anyone should be blamed for this crisis, it should be Warren Buffett. He is a smart man, and he knew what he was doing. Moody's was blessing rotting dog meat as grade A Prime beef. That is criminal. The problem is that these subprime bonds are now causing ripple effects all over the world. Today, countries such as Ireland and Greece are in serious trouble, unable to pay the interest on their bonds. In the United States, governments and municipalities are going broke, unable to pay the interest on their bonds. In 2011, millions of individuals, many retirees, pension funds, governments, and banks are in trouble as the bond market proves how unsafe bonds can be. On top of that, rising inflation makes bonds an even riskier investment, which is why savers who only know how to save are losers. For example, if a bond is paying 3% interest and inflation is running at 5%, the value of a 3% bond crashes, wiping out investors' value. China could be the biggest loser of all. China holds $1 trillion in U.S. bonds. Every time the U.S. government devalues the dollar by printing more money and issuing more bonds, the value of China's $1 trillion investment in the United States goes down. If China stops buying U.S. government bonds, the world economy will stop and crash. Millions of retirees are just like China. Retirees in need of a steady income after retirement believed government bonds were safe. Today, as governments, big and small, go bust and inflation rises, retirees are finding out that savers who saved money in bonds are losers. Municipal bonds are IOUs issued by states, cities, hospitals, schools, and other public institutions. One advantage of municipal bonds is that many are tax-free income. The problem is that municipal bonds are not risk-free. Millions of municipal bond investors are now finding out that the municipal bonds they invested in are in serious trouble. In the United States, more than $3 trillion is invested in municipal bonds. It is estimated that 2/3 of those bonds are now at risk because these public institutions are broke. If more money is not pumped in, the United States could implode from the center as states, cities, hospitals, and schools begin to default, just as subprime homeowners defaulted and stopped paying on their home mortgages. The bond market is the biggest market in the world, bigger than the stock market or the real estate market. The main reason it is the biggest is because most people are savers, level 2 investors. Unfortunately, after 1971, when the rules of money changed, savers became the biggest losers, even if they saved money by investing in bonds. Remember that savers, bondholders, and most people who save money in a retirement plan are people who park their money investing for the long term, while professional investors move their money. Professional investors invest their money in an asset, get their money back without selling the asset, and move their money on to buy more assets. That is why savers who park their money are the biggest losers. Level 3, the I'm too busy level. This is the investor that is too busy to learn about investing. Many investors at this level are highly educated people who are simply too busy with their careers, family, other interests, and vacations. Hence, they prefer to remain financially naive and turn their money over to someone else to manage for them. This is the level that most 401k, IRA, and even very rich investors are at. They simply turn their money over to an expert and then hope and pray their expert is really an expert. Soon after the financial crisis broke in 2007, many affluent people found out that their trusted expert was not an expert at all and, even worse, could not be trusted. In a matter of months, trillions of dollars of wealth vaporized as real estate and stock markets began to crash. Panicking, these investors called their trusted advisors and begged for salvation. A few rich investors found out that their trusted advisors were extremely sophisticated con men running elaborate Ponzi schemes. A Ponzi scheme is an investment scheme where investors are paid off with new investors' money. The scheme works well as long as there are new investors adding new money to pay off the old investors. In the United States, Bernie Madoff became famous because he made off with billions in rich people's money. There are legal Ponzi schemes and illegal Ponzi schemes. Social Security is a legal Ponzi scheme, as is the stock market. In both instances, the scheme works as long as new money flows into the scheme. If new money stops flowing in, the scheme, be it Madoff's scheme, Social Security, or Wall Street, collapses. The problem with the level 3 investor, the I'm too busy investor, is that the person learns nothing if they lose their money. They have no experience except a bad experience. All they can do is blame their advisor, the market, or the government. It is hard to learn from one's mistakes if the person does not know what mistakes were made. Level 4, the I'm a professional level. This is the do-it-yourself investor in the S quadrant. Many retirees become level 4 investors once their working days are over. This investor may buy and sell a few stocks, often from a discount broker. After all, why should they pay a stockbroker's higher commissions when they can do their own research and make their own decisions? If they invest in real estate, the do-it-yourselfer will find, fix, and manage their own properties. And if the person is a gold bug, they will buy and store their own gold and silver. In most cases, the do-it-yourselfer has very little, if any, formal financial education. After all, if they can do it themselves, why should they learn anything? If they do attend a course or two, it is often in a narrow subject area. For example, if they like stock trading, they will focus only on stock trading. The same is true for the small real estate investor. At the age of 9, when Rich Dad began my financial education with the game of Monopoly, he wanted me to have a bigger picture of the world of investing. The following are some of the basic big picture asset classes he wanted me to spend my life learning. As more people realize the need to invest, millions of them will become small level 4 investors in all 4 categories. After the 2007 market crash, millions of people have become entrepreneurs starting small businesses, and many are investing in real estate while prices are low. Most, however, are trying their hand at stock trading and stock picking. As the dollar declines in value, millions of people are beginning to save gold and silver instead of dollars. Obviously, those who also invest in their ongoing financial education, taking classes regularly, and hiring a coach to enhance their performance, will outpace those who just do it on their own. With a sound financial education, a few of the level 4 investors will climb to the next level, the level 5 investor, the capitalist. Level 5, the capitalist level. This is the richest people in the world level. The level 5 investor, a capitalist, is a business owner from the B quadrant investing in the I quadrant. As stated earlier, the level 4 investor is the do-it-yourselfer from the S quadrant investing in the I quadrant. The following are a few examples of the differences between a level 4 investor and a level 5 capitalist investor. 1. The S quadrant investor generally uses his or her own money to invest. The B quadrant investor generally uses OPM, other people's money, to invest. This difference is one of the major differences between the level 4 and level 5 investor. 2. The S quadrant investor is often a solo investor. The S also stands for smartest. The B quadrant investor invests with a team. B quadrant investors do not have to be the smartest. They just have to have the smartest team. Most people know that 2 minds are better than 1. Yet, many S quadrant investors believe they are the smartest people in the world. 3. The S quadrant investor earns less than the B quadrant investor. 4. The S quadrant investor often pays higher taxes than the B quadrant investor. 5. The S quadrant also stands for selfish. The more selfish they are, the more money they make. The B quadrant investor must be generous. The more generous they are, the more money they make. 6. It is difficult to raise money as an S quadrant investor. It is easy for a B quadrant investor to raise capital. Once a person knows how to build a business in the B quadrant, success attracts money. It becomes easy to raise money in the I quadrant if you are successful in the B quadrant. That is the big if. The ease of raising capital is one of the biggest differences between being successful in the S quadrant versus being successful in the B quadrant. Once a person is successful in the B quadrant, life is easy. The challenge is becoming successful. The problem with success in the S quadrant is that raising capital is always difficult. For example, it is easy to take a B quadrant business public via selling shares of the business on the stock market. The story of Facebook is a modern example of how easy it is to raise capital for a B quadrant business. If Facebook had remained just a small web consulting firm, it would have been very difficult to raise investor capital. Another example is McDonald's. If McDonald's had remained just a single hamburger store and S quadrant operation, no one would have invested in it. Once McDonald's began expanding into the B quadrant via a franchise system and was listed on the stock exchange, money poured in. The reason a business sells shares is because the more they share, the richer the entrepreneur becomes. An S quadrant business has a tough time selling shares because the business is too small to share. In real estate, the same is true. When I was a small real estate investor investing in single-family homes, condos, and small 4 to 30-unit apartment buildings, it was difficult getting loans. The moment Kim and I began investing in apartment buildings with over 100 units, banks were more willing to lend us much more money. The reason? On 100-unit plus properties priced in the millions, banks do not finance the investor. They finance the investment. In other words, on properties with over 100 units, banks look more closely at the investment than the investor. On top of that, bankers would rather lend $10 million than $10,000 since it takes just as much time to lend thousands as it does millions. Remember, bankers love debtors because debtors make the bank rich. Once bankers are satisfied with our ability to own and manage large apartment houses profitably, banks often line up to offer us money, even during a crisis. So the question is, who do level 5 investors get their money from? The answer is, they get their money from level 2 and level 3 investors, who save their money in banks and pension plans, starting with nothing. The reason I started this book with the story of Kim and me being homeless is to let readers know that not having any money is not an excuse for not growing smarter, thinking bigger, and becoming richer. For most of my life, I have never had enough money. If I had let not having money be an excuse, I would never have become a capitalist. This is important because a true capitalist never has money. That is why they must know how to raise capital and use other people's money to make a lot of money for a lot of people. How to become a capitalist? My mom and dad wanted me to be successful in the E and S quadrants. My dad suggested I go to school, get my PhD, which he did himself, and work for the government or climb a corporate ladder. In the E quadrant, my mom, a registered nurse, wanted me to become a medical doctor in the S quadrant. My rich dad suggested I become a capitalist. That meant I had to study the skills required for success in the B and I quadrants. My mom and dad believed in traditional schools such as colleges, law schools, and medical schools. They valued good grades, degrees, and credentials, such as a law degree or a medical license. My rich dad believed in education, but not the type of education found in traditional schools. Rather than go to school, my rich dad signed up for seminars and courses that improved his business and investing skills. He also took personal development courses. He was not interested in grades or credentials. He wanted real-life skills that gave him strengths and operational skills in the B and I quadrants. When I was in high school, my rich dad often flew to Honolulu to attend seminars on entrepreneurship and investing. One day, when I told my poor dad that rich dad was going to a class on sales, my poor dad laughed. He could not understand why anyone would want to learn how to sell, especially if the class hours were not applied as credit to an advanced college degree. My poor dad also looked down upon my rich dad because my rich dad never finished high school. Because I had two dads with differing attitudes on education, I became aware that there is more than one type of education. Traditional schools are for those who want to be successful in the E and S quadrants. Another type of education is for those who want to be successful in the B and I quadrants. In 1973, I returned from Vietnam. It was time for me to make up my mind about which dad I was going to follow. Was I going to follow in my poor dad's footsteps and go back to school to become an E or an S, or take my rich dad's path and become a B or an I, eventually to become a capitalist? In 1973, my rich dad suggested I take classes on real estate investing. He said, if you want to be a successful capitalist, you must know how to raise capital and how to use debt to make money. That year, I took a 3-day workshop on real estate investing. It was the start of my education into the world of the capitalist. A few months later, after looking at over 100 properties, I purchased my first rental property on the island of Maui using 100% debt financing and still putting $25 cash flow in my pocket each month. My real-life education had begun. I was learning to use other people's money. To make money, a skill a true capitalist must know. In 1974, my contract with the Marine Corps was up, and I took a job with the Xerox Corporation in Hawaii, not because I wanted to climb the corporate ladder, but because Xerox had the best sales training program. Again, this was all part of my rich dad's educational program to train me to become a capitalist. By 1994, Kim and I were financially free, never needing a job or a company or a government retirement plan. Rich Dad was correct. My education could set me free, but not the education found in traditional schools. When the markets began to crash in 2007, rather than crash with the rest of the economy, our wealth skyrocketed. As the stock market and real estate markets crashed, great deals floated to the surface, and banks were more than eager to lend us millions of dollars to buy and take over their investments gone bad. In 2010 alone, Kim and I acquired over $87 million in real estate using loans from banks and pension funds. That year was our best year so far. As Rich Dad often said, if you are a true investor, it does not matter if the markets are going up or coming down. A true investor does well in any market condition. Where are you? Take a moment and assess where you are today. Are you at investor level 1? If there is nothing in your asset column with no income coming in from your investments and you have too many liabilities, then you are starting at the bottom level, ground zero. If you are deeply in bad debt, your best investment might be to get out of debt. There is nothing wrong with being deeply in debt, unless you do nothing. After I lost my first business, I was nearly $1 million in debt. It took me almost 5 years to reach zero. In many ways, learning from my mistakes and taking responsibility for my mistakes was the best education I could have asked for. If I had not learned from my mistakes, I would not be where I am today. Kim and I put together a simple program and workbook. How we got out of bad debt, explaining the process we used to get out of hundreds of thousands of dollars of bad debt. It is a simple, almost painless process. All it takes is some discipline and a willingness to learn. Are you at investor level 2? If you are a saver, be very careful, especially if you are saving money in a bank or in a retirement plan. In general, savers are losers. Saving is often a strategy for people who do not want to learn anything. You see, it takes no financial intelligence to save. You can train a monkey to save money. The risk in saving is that you learn little. And if your savings are wiped out, either by market decline or devaluation of the money supply, you wind up without money and without education. Remember that the US dollar has lost 95% of its value since 1971. It will not take long to lose the rest of its value. As stated before, a person can even lose money saving gold if they buy gold at the wrong price. I suggest taking a few courses on investing, either in stocks or real estate, and see if anything interests you. If nothing interests you, then keep saving. Remember that the bond market is the biggest market in the world, simply because most people and businesses are savers, not investors. This may sound strange to savers, but the bond market and banks need borrowers. Are you at investor level 3? This level is similar to level 2, except that this level invests in riskier instruments such as stocks, bonds, mutual funds, insurance, and exchange-traded funds. Again, the risk with this level is that, if everything is lost, the investor loses everything and learns nothing. If you are ready to move out of level 3 by investing in your financial education and taking control of your money, then level 4 is a good level for you. Are you at investor level 4? If you are here as a professional investor, congratulations. Very few people invest the time to learn and manage their own money. The key to success at level 4 is lifelong learning, great teachers, great coaches, and like-minded friends. Level 4 investors take control of their lives, knowing that their mistakes are their opportunities to learn and to grow. The fear of investing does not frighten them. It challenges them. Are you at investor level 5? To me, being a capitalist investor at level 5 is like being on top of the world. Literally, the world is your oyster. The world has no borders. In this world of high-speed technology, it is easier than ever to be a Capitalist in a world of plenty. If you are at this level, keep learning and keep giving. Remember that true capitalists are generous because a B quadrant capitalist knows you must give more to receive more. It's your choice. One great thing about freedom is the freedom to choose to live the life you want to live. In 1973, at the age of 26, I knew I did not want to live my life the way my parents chose to live. I did not want to be living below my means, living paycheck to paycheck, trying to make ends meet. To me, this was not living. It may have been good for them, but I knew in my heart that it was not right for me. I also knew that going back to school for advanced degrees was not for me. I knew school did not make people rich because I grew up in a family of advanced degrees. Most of my uncles and aunts had master's degrees, and a few had their doctorates. I did not want to climb a corporate ladder in the E quadrant either, nor did I want to be a very special specialist in the S quadrant. So I took the path less traveled and decided to become an entrepreneur and professional investor. I wanted the freedom to travel the world, do business, and invest. It was my choice. I do not recommend that path for everyone, but I do recommend that a person choose. That is what freedom is, the power to choose. I encourage you to look at the 5 levels of investors and make your choice. Each level has its pros and cons, its advantages and disadvantages. Each level has a price greater than money. If you choose level 1, 2, or 3, there are many other people and organizations qualified to support your investment life at those levels. In 1997, Kim and I created the Rich Dad Company to provide educational games, programs, and coaches for those individuals who seek to be level 4 and level 5 investors. A final word on investing. In the world of money, you will often see the term ROI, return on investment. Depending upon whom you talk to, ROI will vary. For example, if you talk to a banker, he or she may say, "We pay 3% interest on your money." For many people, this may sound good. If you talk to a financial planner, they may say, "You can expect a return on your investment of 10% per year." To many people, a 10% return is exciting. To most people, especially those in the E and S quadrants, the higher your return, the greater the risk. So the person accepting a 10% return already assumes there is more risk in that investment than the 3% return from the bank. And there is. Ironically, both the 3% return from the bank and the 10% return from the stock market are extremely high risk. The money in the bank is at risk due to inflation and higher taxes caused by banks printing money. The 10% in the stock market is at risk due to volatility caused by HFT, high-frequency trading, and due to the novice investor investing without insurance. In my world, ROI stands for a return on information. This means that the more information I have, the higher my returns, and the lower my risk. I caution you, because what I am about to say may sound insane or too good to be true. Yet I assure you, it is true. In my world, the world of a level 4 and level 5 investor, an infinite return is expected and with low risk. An infinite return means money for nothing. In other words, investors receive income without having any of their own money in the investment. In an earlier section, I wrote that I took a real estate course in 1973. After looking at over 100 investments, I purchased a condo on Maui using 100% financing, which means I used none of my own money. I put $25 each month into my pocket. That $25 was an infinite return on my investment, since I had zero invested. And I quote from that section, "My real-life education had begun. I was learning to use other people's money to make money, a skill a true capitalist must know. I know $25 a month is not a lot of money. Yet, it was not the money that was important to me. It was learning a way of thinking, a way of processing information and producing a result. One of the reasons that I have so much money today is simply because I was educated and trained to think differently. If you have, read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You may recall that the title of the first chapter is "The Rich Don't Work for Money." One of the reasons why those in the E and S quadrants have problems with that statement is because most went to school to learn to work for money. They did not go to school to learn how to have other people's money work for them. When Kim and I started the Rich Dad Company, we borrowed $250,000 from investors. We paid the money back once the company was up and running. Today, the business has returned multi-millions of dollars, not only to Kim and me, but to companies and individuals associated with Rich Dad. As I said, capitalists are generous. My point is that the moment a person knows how to make money out of nothing or with other people's money or a bank's money, they enter a different world. It's a world almost exactly opposite from the E and S quadrant's world of hard work, high taxes, and low returns on investment. The reason most people believe saving is smart and a 10% return in the stock market is worth it is simply due to a lack of financial education. Your best ROI is not a return on your investment, but a return on your information. This is why a financial education is essential, especially for the uncertainty of the world ahead. Remember this about the word education. Education gives us the power to turn information into meaning. In the information age, we are drenched with financial information. Yet, without financial education, we cannot turn information into useful meaning for our lives. In closing, I say the I quadrant is the most important quadrant for your future. No matter what you do for a living, how well you do in the I quadrant will determine your future. In other words, even if you make very little money in the E or S quadrant, if you are truly sincere about getting wealthy quickly, read and reread the 5 levels. Each time I read the levels, I see a little of myself. In all the levels, I recognize not only strengths, but also character flaws that hold me back. The way to great financial wealth is to strengthen your strengths and address your character flaws. And the way to do that is by first recognizing them rather than pretending that you're perfect. We all want to think the best of ourselves. I've dreamed of being a level 5 capitalist for most of my life. I knew this was what I wanted to become from the moment my rich dad explained the similarities between a stock picker and a person who bets on horses. But after studying the different levels of this list, I could see the character flaws that held me back. I found character flaws in myself from level 4 that would often rear their ugly heads in times of pressure. The gambler in me was good, but it was also not so good. So with the guidance of Kim, my friends, and additional schooling, I began addressing my own character flaws and turning them into strengths. My effectiveness as a level 5 investor improved immediately. Although I do operate today as a level 5 investor, I continue to read and reread the 5 levels and work on improving myself. Here's another question for you. 2. What level of investor do you want or need to be in the near future? Warning: anyone with the goal of becoming a level 5 investor must develop their skills first as a level 4 investor. Level 4 cannot be skipped on your path to level 5. Anyone who tries to do this is really a level 3 investor, a gambler. If your answer to question 2 is the same as that in question 1, then you are where you want to be. If you are happy where you are as an investor, then there's not much need to read any further in this book. One of life's greatest joys is to be happy where you are. Congratulations. However, if you still want and need to know more financially and continue to be interested in pursuing your financial freedom, read on. The remaining chapters will focus primarily on the characteristics of someone in the B and I quadrants. In these chapters, you will learn how to move from the left side of the cash flow quadrant to the right side easily and with low risk. The shift from the left side to the right will continue to focus on intangible assets that make possible the tangible assets on the right side. Before going on, I have one last question. 3. To go from homeless to millionaires in less than 10 years, what level of investor do you think Kim and I had to be? The answer is found in the next chapter, where I share some learning experiences from our personal journey to financial freedom.